So what I want to take a second on are two things. One, I want to share some research. And number two, I want to tell you how we got here and why we set up this particular town hall. So over the past couple weeks, we've been preparing to think about how we help our region reopen and get this economy back on track and do so smartly, safely, and so that our businesses have every chance to get back on their feet as quickly as possible. So we started out with a survey. So first I want to just share what we learned from talking to about 500 businesses. So I'm going to show you a couple slides, if you've got the slides up. Vicki, can you advance those for me?
Yes, I'll try.
All right. There we go. So we just did a quick survey. The reason for doing this survey was to get our hands around what our businesses were most concerned about as they think about the chance to get their doors back open. And so the first thing we asked is, what are they doing right now? More than half of our businesses have actually been operating through this. Those are the lead factors. Yeah. And others that you know. I think we're doing some, would you please mute if you can? Thank you. So more than half our businesses have been in operation. What that might mean to you as those that pay attention to the childcare industry is they've had some way to take care of their family circumstances as they've been at work. A lot of that has been based on the fact that they might have a spouse or a partner that wasn't at work. So that's been the circumstance for the last 6 weeks. You can also see data on those that are temporarily closed and that sort of thing. And maybe some of your businesses are in that circumstance where you've been temporarily closed. And the second thing we asked them, our second slide.
Come on.
That's all right, we'll get there.
I think, gosh.
Are they hard to advance?
Yeah, I guess in my,
I can talk through them. We'll get them up as we can. The second slide we asked them is what was most important to them? What are the biggest concerns our businesses had? The first was how their employees can return to work safely. That gets chopped down into some parts. Employees can't come to work safely if they've got concerns about their family. If they know they can't come to work safely, if when they leave work, they go back into an environment where they might pick up the virus or be at risk again. So that was a big issue for our businesses. The second issue was how they make sure that their customers feel comfortable coming back into the work environment. So those were two big things that came up. As we delved into it a little more, we learned more that will matter to you. And then the third question we asked, just for your information, is if they have a problem reopening with liquidity, what's that number look like? So you'll see here that a lot of our businesses actually don't have a liquidity problem. They've got the cash they need to buy their inventory or get ready to reopen. Not true for all businesses. Many of you on this call may be a circumstance you want to talk about, but I just wanted to give you that background. But what I learned then, can we go to one more slide here, Vicki? We'll leave that one up. What I learned over the past week from the 4 town halls we hosted with our retailers and our restaurants and our manufacturers is that childcare is going to be one of the biggest issues they face as they consider reopening their businesses. That's probably no surprise to you all on the call because you know this business far better than I do. But because that came up so broadly from both the businesses that were already operating and those that have been closed, we really appreciate your time today because we're going to ask you to help us understand what the circumstances are in our market and what we need to be thinking about as we talk to you about the business you know well and how you can transition from whatever state you've been in for these last 6 or 8 weeks to being back in business or back in preparing to get into business. So the slide, want to go back to this one? This slide is what I'm guessing some of your issues are. This is Tara Barney guessing. I am no expert in this business, but I put this up to catalyze our conversation. And I'm hosting this town hall because I'm the ultimate generalist. I asked Alicia if she would partner with me on this because 4Cs is probably one of your strong right-hand partners in your business. So Alicia, would you take a second to just offer a comment before we start chit-chatting with everybody on the call?
Absolutely. Thank you all again, as Tara mentioned, for being with us tonight. We are hopefully going to provide as much support as we can, answer as many questions as we can tonight. Anything we don't have answers to, of course, we will find the answers. You've been getting a lot of information from a lot of sources. You're getting them email, you're getting them e-blast, you're getting social media posts, you're getting webinars, everything's coming at you. So we really just wanted to hear from you, and we wanted to understand, okay, what are you really thinking about opening it? What we've heard the most is sanitation supplies, which corresponds with the slide that Tara showed earlier. Really thinking about thermometers, cleaning supplies, those types of things. But we wanted to hear from you guys tonight and just give us a heads up on how we can support you. Tara, you're still muted.
So I'm going to suggest if you can open this conversation and share some thoughts with us, you unmute yourself, which you absolutely can do. I put up a list here of things to start the conversation. Would anyone like to kick off what they're seeing from their perspective? So if not, I'll start calling on you. May I ask who's open and operating right now? They might give us a thought.
We're not currently open, St. Vincent Early Learning Center. We are waiting to see what the governor does tomorrow before we do that, because we're trying to protect our employees.
And are your employees pretty much available when that opportunity comes?
Yes, we are still currently paying them and making sure everything is current. And thankfully we got a PPP loan.
Great, great. And are there others on the call that have been able to keep their employees basically available and under compensation for this?
This is Jamie from USI Children's Learning Center. Our staff are available, but our university has put a restriction in order that we will not be able to go back this summer.
Ah, okay.
And then I also represent the Early Childhood Association. It's our region chapter of NACI, the National Organization for Early Childhood. And I can tell you from a few of the different meetings and communities that I'm a part of, fear is driving a large percentage of our providers. I'm pretty close to our family child care home providers, and I know that in sitting in the CDC webinar, there are quite a few suggestions to maintain the highest level of safety, and many of those providers are concerned about meeting as many of those guidelines as possible, being an only provider in their home.
Yeah.
We have been able to maintain staff salaries at my location, but I do know for our community and our state data that we collect from IAC, we know that many providers would make more right now on unemployment, and many providers do not receive benefits packages.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I work for a university and I'm very grateful for the benefits I do receive, but the majority of early childhood professionals in this community do not receive benefits, and they make less than what an unemployment check is right now.
Yeah.
Therefore, it would be hard for me to go back to work and make less and be scared.
Yeah, yeah. So in that whole field of family providers, I'm guessing we're going to have a lot of loss of slots and availability. Is that what you're
I don't think they'll never come back. I think a lot of people are waiting to see who does come back and how it works for them. I know with comments on, Vice President Pence being up in Northern Indiana today, and they were all saying, okay, so let's just watch and see what happens to him now because he didn't wear his mask. So it's really just like that in the whole community. Well, let's see what happens to the next person or the next wave. And I know Laura Norville last night said in a meeting that they're going to start making Indiana guidelines for licensed childcare next week based on what the governor presents tomorrow.
Right.
So it kind of is a wait and see game.
Mm-hmm.
And if we expect any of our families to go right back to work without that childcare, I am concerned from being in the field so long. Does that mean some of them will lose their jobs? And do they all know about the new FMLA laws? Because that could protect their job, but it also doesn't guarantee 100% of their pay.
Absolutely. Well, actually, we just did a webinar at 1:30 today. We had 200 folks on it, walking through those federal disaster programs, because they are complicated as all get out. But there is a lot of opportunity in there for individuals to be protected and to protect their family and to do what's safest for their family. And that is a big benefit if you understand it. And so one of the things that the chamber is doing is trying to put out as much communication that's useful in that area. So here's when I say, we aren't the best at all this. So in spaces like childcare, it walks the line between business and community support. And so we will be immensely appreciative of all of you that are in this business if there are things that we can better communicate on or help to identify concerns or address them. So the agenda I put up is coming from a bunch of people that aren't really in your business. So there may be things that are far more important to you getting open than what I put up on the screen here. But I appreciate that perspective, Jamie, because that is the sort of sensitivity we want to understand. So we aren't being dismissive or not taking seriously this area of concern.
So that's what we're having a problem with right now. While we don't want to bring our employees back until the stay-at-home order is over, I feel like 70% of our children are below the poverty line. Mm-hmm. And if those families have to go back to work on May 11th, then we better be open on May 11th to help them. Yeah. So we're having a debate internally, because we want to bring our staff back a week ahead of time so we can train them on new policies and procedures about opening this coming Monday, so that we can, or opening for our staff this coming Monday, so that we can serve our families next Monday. And that's really where we're struggling, is making sure our families are taken care of, but our staff is also safe.
Mm-hmm. Do you have the supplies you need to do that, may I ask? As far as you know so far?
We have been working on it. A majority of things have been donated, thankfully, through local companies to at least have masks for our staff, a couple per week, so that we can get them cleaned for them. We are doubtful our children would keep masks on if we tried. So I think we're beyond that, but we did get some of the laser thermometers, and we're just going to have to temp check every single person before they come in our building and make sure they sanitize well. And we have a lot of other rules and regulations that are going to go along with that. Tomorrow we are sending out a survey to our parents to see who is actually coming back when we open.
I'm going to put Jonathan Pope on the spot because he's looking at me and I know he's online. And because I've appreciated being part of the host committee as Jonathan's joined our community, and I know that he has a lot of history in being supportive of childcare through his work with the Y. And I wonder if you have thoughts, Jonathan, or insight into where and when the Y is going to be helpful in this space, whether it's summer camps or what might be out there that's going to be a part of how we solve this demand.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for letting me join. Actually on 2 Zooms at one time is pretty fun. I put the other one on hold so I could join you guys for a bit. But yeah, we're anxious, just like everybody, to get back to serving our kids. But understanding there are some challenges with that. I can tell you that one of our representatives had a conversation with someone from the governor's office, and the statement that was made was they are eager for, childcare centers to get back going so that essential employees can get back to work. So from the governor's standpoint, that's not coming from him, that's coming from his office, that childcare is pretty critical. What we're doing is we're monitoring conversations with the CDC, the American Camping Association. We also have had direct conversations, the YMCA, the USA, with the CDC, and they've outlined actually best practices for childcare facilities to get back into that space. But they have not endorsed it by any means just yet. But we are waiting on protocols, guidelines, things of that nature that should be made available to us real soon in order for us to get back into business.
Are camps a part of this that are slightly different from normal childcare?
So day camps, we approach from the same vein as school-age childcare. So our day camp programming would be, to us, the same as our school-age programming. The demographics the same, the age ranges, the activities might vary slightly, but we implement the same protocols.
Gotcha.
And that can be by option, for what I understand, with talking to Lauren Norrell last night as well, that most school age camps in the summer are unregulated. So written rules and guidelines, state, national, most of them in our community are not regulated on a regular basis. So choosing to follow best practices is what Indiana is hoping to see in group settings anywhere, even in unregulated care.
So may I ask then, might we look at what the Y is recommending as just some helpful guidance for our region? Would that be something to get our hands on and look at? Because we're approaching a time when we're going to have a lot of school-age children that are going to be in flux, it seems.
I think the CDC guidelines would be your go-to.
Okay.
Yeah, that I want to clarify that. Yeah, the conversation we had was with the CDC.
Gotcha.
And they are making suggested guidelines for Y, which would be applicable to anyone.
But Tara, those guidelines are different. That's not your child care 0 to 5 years of age.
Right. I understand. I'm thinking about those two cohorts, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah. They do have guidelines that they will be releasing, I believe, on their website that will cover all ages. We were talking specifically the day camp and our resident camp, but they did at least insinuate that they'd have some information, best practices for all ages. You know, some of the things they talked about, one in particular was, actually segregating kids, putting them in groups and keeping them in the same groups. So if you have a group of 5 kids with a teacher, that they would remain with that teacher throughout that week or as long as you can, to limit that potential if someone was, infected, that they would not infect other children. You almost contain it in that sense. But there was a litany of best practices that would pretty much carry over to any age group.
Yeah.
And Tara, for those that are on the call, currently for the child care arena, that in Vanderburgh County, 54% are still open. So, you're about half that we're under right now. There's going to be ongoing support for the comeback from the Spark Early Learning Labs and small business support, emergency development fund. And they're also doing a cost study to figure out how to support the best way for the comeback at a state level.
So you're talking in jargon that I don't understand, which is okay, as long as everyone else understands it.
Some of us got it.
No, that's good. That's good. That's why I'm keeping a loose in my sight line here. But can I just ask in general, the CARES Act has some money in it to support this industry. Have we got that figured out locally so you all understand it?
No, and at this time, many of us child care providers have received a grant that is, I think the label of it's COVID-19 really. But up to this point, we have been able to receive almost full payment for every child. And therefore we have been able to pay our staff.
Right.
As of this week, our next 2-week application, If we're closed, there's a $5,000 max reimbursement, which is huge for me. And then if you're open, a $20,000 max reimbursement, but you must not charge the families who choose not to attend. So when we open back up, program that's been open or opens back up on the grant that I'm speaking of, and I'm a place that does not qualify for a small business, that means I can maximum reimbursement on that grant of $5,000 now, but if I opened, it would be $20,000. But you have to do the math on your business, on your budget as a small child care or large child care for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Is that enough to not charge any families attending? Because in my communication with other facilities who've stayed open, it's very low percentage of children attending, and you can't charge the ones who aren't attending.
Alicia's muted, but she's nodding her head on that, so I'm guessing that.
It's absolutely correct.
And may I ask the others on the call, do you have this information? Do you have what you need in this space to be making these decisions on behalf of your business?
So we the CARES Act, we actually tapped into the payroll protection program. I'm not familiar with some of the CARES Act that's applicable directly to child care programs.
Yeah.
But the payroll protection program, we've spent a lot of time with it. We have a pretty intimate understanding. So if there's someone that has or is interested in that, I'll be happy to, be a resource. But we feel like we've navigated those waters pretty good. We're bringing our workforce back, and before we can even serve people, we're just going to train. And I told my staff, let's train them as much as we can, as long as we can. So if you're receiving some funding, hopefully that is applicable to training as well as you gear up for this unknown. We just don't know when we're going to be back in business in that realm, but at least be able to utilize that first 1 or 2 or 3 weeks to get the staff ready to serve.
I'm putting something in the chat. If you have a PPP, would you just let us know? Because if we can arrange a little peer group among you that helps to circulate this information, we're happy to do that. So if you've gotten one of those, you might put it in the chat, or otherwise, tune in so we can see if there's any way you all can be helpful to each other. And then those of you that haven't, I don't have good advice on other funding resources, but I guess I'd be open to that conversation. Do others have ideas of how they're thinking through their business plan going forward that you want to unmute and share?
Tara, I don't know, maybe if you guys talked about the local funding that's available, the local COVID-19 funding.
Yeah,
that's open-ended. So if someone, wants to access that, it's somewhat competitive in terms of there's a big volume, but childcare, it's an essential thing. And, if you're interested.
Great point, because I think they probably look very, with great interest on how we could use that relief fund to support childcare, because it will get our economy back and moving, and we want our kids to be in safe circumstances. Alicia, do you have, are you doing anything to kind of orchestrate in that space?
Our agency ourselves have done that, but we are looking to Spark Learning for that guidance, because we want the same language to be going out to the child cares. So Spark Learning Lab, and I believe we have Alyssa on the phone. I don't know if she has any information specific to Spark and what trainings or guidance and support they have.
Okay.
I am here.
You got it now.
So I'm on this call because I've been serving on a work group for Spark that's looking at kind of the financial piece of how to support providers during this time. And so we've been rolling out resources a couple of times a week around the PPE, around just good business planning to kind of support them through that. We also have work groups that are looking at restart and recovery and at wellness, both for caregivers and for families and children. We are right now, just like the child care providers, kind of waiting to see what our state decides, our early childhood state agency. So we unfortunately don't have a lot more information than anyone else does at this point, but we are trying to continue to roll out resources. So those resources are going to continue ongoing, and as we get more information, and we've been having pretty quick turnarounds. So there's times in the past 2 weeks where we've gotten information on Monday, and on Tuesday we have a webinar to share that out. So I think for providers that are on this call, if you've not been to Spark Learning Lab's website, you should definitely get linked up there, and you'll be able to see. You can sign up for alerts through email and kind of see what we're rolling out as we're rolling it out. I do anticipate there's going to be a lot more information as we get it. We get it right back out to everyone else.
Alyssa, would you put that? Are you someplace you can put that in the chat, or could somebody put that in the chat?
Yes, I definitely can.
That would be great, because I am only this familiar with Spark, and I want to make sure that I don't misinterpret things. But that's great.
And new, so everybody's only this familiar with Spark.
Okay.
Tara, this is Elisa with 4C, the program director, and I just wanted to chime in to say that we have, as the program directors across the state, we have been working, trying to find local resources, aside, as far as other opportunities, like Jonathan had mentioned, the local COVID mission that is in place, but across 28 counties, we're trying to find additional resources for providers as well. So we appreciate any input of needs so that we know what direction to further look into. That would be greatly appreciated. And I just want to give a shout out to all the providers and thank you for all the work that you're doing for the families and for our community.
Well, that's great timing, because just in the last couple hours, quite a few local revolving loan grant pools have been made available in Warwick County, Gibson County, Posey County. So there are resources in Vanderburgh County, but these came through Okra, which is, kind of the rural CDBG. But they're brand new revolving loan funds and grant funds in the counties that are immediately around here in Southwest Indiana. So if you're in any of those counties, or any of your clients are, I'd get in line there right away, because they're going to be first come, first serve kind of opportunities. We'll put those on our website ASAP, but it literally just came through in the last hour. So you're the first group that knows. Are there other issues that you're struggling with on how you deal with who gets to come back, whether they're safe? Are there protocols out there that are already available to you that you can ask the family the appropriate questions about, how they've been quarantining and keeping their children in a safe circumstance? Do you feel like you've got enough industry guidance in that space? This is for everyone that hasn't commented yet. The people whose pictures I can see are at a disadvantage because I just start calling on you. But is anybody facing that? Is anybody having to turn away families that you don't think you've got a safe understanding of their circumstances? Okay, then I will.
We anticipate that we will. My name is Jeremy. I work at the Dream Center. We have about 90 kids registered for our summer camp program. And our current facilities, I just don't believe it's possible that we can serve that many at that level. And so we're talking about potentially turning some kids away. We're also, you talked a little bit about, do we feel like there's adequate guidance out there? And I'll just say, I don't think there is. I'm pretty confused. And I think there's a lot more questions than there are answers as it relates to the guidance that's available. I'm sure it's coming. It's just, we're all trying to make predictions and do our very best with the information that we have. The other thing I will say is that I'm concerned about supplies. Masks, not so concerned with, but we are concerned about hand sanitizer, thermometers, that sort of thing. And, you know, the cursory Google around and see if you can find it. There's just not any resources out there that are in stock. And so if there were a way for somebody to coordinate a group effort along those lines, I know that would be useful to an organization like ours that's just pretty small and doesn't have some of the, I guess, buying power of some of the larger organizations.
We're just putting up on our website today a list of the local suppliers in 3 categories, because your point, Jeremy, is a good one. There's folks that are selling stuff that might or might not be available when you actually need it. We're glad we have them. And then there are folks that actually have things in stock that we want to make sure we differentiate. And then we have some businesses here in the region that have shifted their operations to make stuff. Now, those folks, in my opinion, are our most valuable resource because they can support our region long term. So we're posting those under manufacturers on our site. And I happen to know, for example, that for all of your businesses, you can buy in gallon sizes. You don't need just small hand pumps. You need bigger volumes. And so that'll be available on our website. And so shoot me an email if you're not finding what you need there. We'll try to help you connect in that space. I can offer a lot of help in the sanitizing and disinfecting products, and especially for all of you, because the problem right now is getting them in the gel form. So the Purell form that we all love is not readily available yet, but it will be soon. But there's a lot of liquid. So I was just at Toyota today touring their operation. They're walking back thousands of people. They're using this liquid stuff. And so you pump it, and it's messy. Some of it falls on the floor, but it does a great job. So I think that kind of material is going to be available. I got no way to promise on gowns or wipes that you pull out of a container yet. That's still a long way out. But we are trying to make sure that we understand your needs, because we want every house to have it, but we need you all to have it most. So that, as I said, we're assembling a list of that on our website that lets you source. If that isn't working for you, we sure want to hear from you, because if we have to do something that's more targeted, we will, because I realize you can't open and operate safely if you don't have disinfecting supplies. So appreciate you bringing that up. Can I ask one more question in this space? I feel like in the early childhood, birth to school, there's a lot of support, a lot of understanding. Do we need to amp up what we're doing to support in this whole school age space?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It just sounds like we don't have as much content in that space as maybe we need for Dream Center and others.
Well, just in general, early childhood education providers are not advocated for. And if you've watched any of the governor's press conferences, he's only actually said the word daycare one time in all of the ones that he's talked about, and he's been very vague. Whereas the other governors in surrounding states have made it very clear. But the ECE children, or the ECE providers, are not being talked about. FSSA had a very small webinar that got maxed out. It's been really difficult. The early childhood people and teachers are essential employees, but aren't being treated as such.
Yeah.
So
that's a fair point. I mean, I appreciate that context, because that does seem like a space that we may need to pull more information forward and do what we can to support this conversation. And I will certainly be in touch with the school districts. Maybe that's a useful partner here that we haven't got at the table yet.
The other thing I'd like to add, coming from Spark, I know that just last night, and some of these folks were at a meeting that I was at, when Nicole Norville from OECOSL, the state, talked about a survey that they recently sent out asking early childhood providers about their plans for school agers for the summer. So I know that Spark is very quickly working on standing up some resources based on what they hear from that for school age providers, for summer providers. And the great thing about our resources is that you do not have to be a licensed childcare to access. These are going to be for anybody across the state. So I think that there will be some, once we get that guidance from the state as to what their expectations are, then we're going to be able to support people through that too.
Great, then we're hopeful you'll keep feeding us lots of information. We'll do all we can to send it out, but we know you are far more expert in this space than we're ever going to be. So I'm also going to look to you to tell us when we put something up that might be wrong, because we certainly don't want to be in that space either. But I appreciate that update, Alyssa.
Tara, and one of the concerns that's coming up, initially it was, okay, childcare spots, kind of like when we have an ice storm. What are we going to do? Never experienced this. Well, everybody's pretty much figured out what they're going to do through the end of the school year, but now then we're we don't know how far into the summer this is going to go. We don't know how things are going. And so there's this next wave of concern for parents who had planned summer after school care, such as Dream Center and places like that for the school and the school agers, that now then they're all kind of holding their hands going, what's next?
Yeah. Well, you know, the opportunity for people to have 8 extra weeks of, leave to stay home with their kids is fine if that's the last resort, but that doesn't help our economy. If we can get you back in business and them back at work faster, that's good for everyone. So we'd rather be proactive in this space if we can. Are there others in the call that deal in the school age space or camp space?
Tara, I'm Lauren Norvell. I'm the education curator at Musker Park Zoo. And I talk regularly with the people like me that work with these school age children, really as far as being sole care providers only in the summer. Mm-hmm. And so we don't feel we have the kind of expertise you guys, a lot of you guys do in all of the child care laws, regulations, policies, procedures. So we're really looking for guidance from this community, and we are really struggling with knowing, obviously our camps are not essential daycare for the most part, but during the summer they kind of turn into essential daycare. So we're really struggling with if we should have our camps, because they're not always essential, or how do we select, those families that do need it for essential care, and because we're really having to reduce our capacities. We're trying to take the precautions of spreading kids out and having fewer kids at one time in an area, things like that, but we're really struggling with how to proceed. I was on the CDC page today, and I really can't say I found anything that wasn't just really general, really general about disinfection. And I know a lot of my colleagues in the community that I have been talking with, which is, mostly other similar organizations like mine, like the museum and CMO and Wesselman's and Swander, and, places that are kind of dealing with the same level of decision-making that we are. I think we're all really kind of waiting on the governor's address and how that's going to look come Monday. So if this group has any resources that you could share, guidance you could give to that, our kind of child care provider, educator, that would be most welcome.
If I can, I'll just piggyback on that and say that I think something maybe a lot of people aren't considering is that organizations like ours are waiting to make decisions about our service provision this summer based on what you guys do. Because if we can't take kids to swimming pools, if we can't take kids to zoos and museums and things like that, we're going to have to drastically reduce the number of hours that we're serving them during the summer. One of our ground rules during summer program at the Dream Center is don't be at the Dream Center because kids want to go. They want to go have fun and they want to do summer activities. And so we're watching organizations like Zoo, Children's Museum, et cetera, and we're going to make a determination on our availability based on that.
It sounds like we're waiting on each other.
Yeah.
Well, it does seem like this is the sort of thing we want to coordinate in a safe fashion because, I know there's so many families that do a week here, a week here, a week there, or they use Dream Center and have the same experience. And that's a big chunk of our young children that are otherwise going to not have a system this summer.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I'm pretty certain of is that when the zoo does open, it'll be timed ticketing and only a certain number of people will come through the gate every hour, and it's one-way flow. And it just really depends on the level of risk in our community. where we may not even have our buildings open except for the restrooms. So really, we're just kind of waiting and seeing also, but even when we do open, it'll probably have some limitations. So that's something you definitely would need to know, Jeremy, for bringing a group of kids out to the zoo in any of your summer programs. I see that probably very likely through June anyway.
Yes,
Speaking-
Sorry about that, Clarissa, go ahead.
Typically at USI, we have about 90 kids in a summer enrichment camp. And it was determined by Dr. Rashawn that that would not happen this summer because it wouldn't particularly be safe for the children. So there are an additional 90 children who are scrambling school age. And I also oversee the Children's Learning Center, and he has put together a task force to evaluate that. And while it doesn't look like we'll be open this summer there at all for young children, that is still somewhat fluid based on his task force. So I don't think, I know we won't be having summer camp. That decision's already been made. But if and when our children come back, I think it's very fluid.
Thanks, Clarissa. Go ahead.
I would just say too, like the pressure to be open for our families and for the kids that we're used to serving is very heavy.
Yeah.
But when that first kid comes back sick because we couldn't keep kids from crawling all over each other because we had too many there, or because we couldn't social distance during lunch, now we go from serving 90 normally to 25 as a stopgap measure. Now we go to 0 because we got to shut it all down and clean everything up. And so like, this is a very, leaders are going to be made and broken over this, I think for sure. Like this is going to be a watershed moment for people in our type of organizations, because it's just, there's no owner manual for this kind
And
of
that's
stuff.
our worry too, Jeremy, is that we're going to reopen and then we're going to have to close again because we have 172 students and 50 staff members, and it's just going to take one of them and we have to shut down again.
Jonathan, can you speak to in the event that, so to this specific issue, in the event that a Y member or a kid who is attending a Y program turns up ill, are you guys, is it in your MO to have to close for a time to disinfect and clean and do all that sort of stuff? Have you guys talked through that eventuality?
Well, we have talked through it, and our protocol will be to notify the health department, and the health department will help us make that decision. What we need to do to mitigate, further infection. And that could include closing down for some, specific period of time. But we certainly will have to notify the health department when that happens. Now, we made the decision.
Insight here from the industry perspective, in that there's a lot being done in this space with our manufacturers, because it's the same issue. One person gets sick in a big manufacturing floor, they've figured out how to keep people working in their own pods, if you will, and with good protocol on where they interface so they don't have to close the whole thing down. So there may be some transferability there. I think that's one of the reasons that in the early childhood space, they're keeping kids in groups of 8 or 10 or whatever it is, so they can avoid having to close the entire operation down. So there
And
may
actually,
be some lessons learned there, they're transferable in the school age space.
with the child care CDC guidelines, it says no field trips, and if you have a confirmed case, close down for 2 weeks.
The whole facility?
Yes.
That'd be an interesting conversation to see if the schools have any insight there. I don't know, but I think you're right. This is the high risk part of this.
Yeah, I don't know how state licensing, plays into this too, for everyone that's regulated. If something like that does happen, what is their mandate, if any? How would they want us to respond? So that's another question.
I have a question about the, one of my biggest worries is asymptomatic carriers, because we have essential animal care staff. We have 45 staff here that have to be here. So one of the great risks of us opening is that we can contaminate them. I mean, even I haven't been working on site most of our staff that aren't essential to our animal care are not on site. So I'm really worried about asymptomatic, and I don't really feel that a laser thermometer is really going to help much. Are you all doing the laser thermometer every day when they get there, or do you feel like me that that's kind of not a guarantee of anything?
We're actually doing
we'll
that
be
with
checking
our,
temperatures.
yeah, we're
Go ahead,
doing
John.
that with our emergency care. We have 2 sites with St. Vincent and Deaconess, and we're actually doing that every day.
And our big manufacturers are doing it every day for every person.
We will be doing it every day for every child, every teacher, every parent that walks in our building. They will have to have booties on their feet. They will have to have masks on their faces. They're allowed in our building for 10 minutes, no more, in and out. We're even closing an hour early just so we can sanitize ourselves, even though we have a cleaning crew.
Now,
And that's a guideline for the state licensed childcare. The temperature taking is not a suggestion. It's now a licensing regulation.
Ah, okay.
something to consider too is with your staff. We talk through what it, for the entire association, staff are going to submit to temperature checks. And if a person does have an elevated temperature, then they have to stay out for 72 hours. They can return if their temperature is down with, obviously within that 72 hours. But that's something that they have to sit out. You have to think about it.
And are you all using some kind of a survey for your staff and your clients that they might take before they come back into the workplace initially? And then a lot of protocols I've seen ask them every morning, has anything changed from your survey results? To make sure that this stays a strong partnership between the employer and the employee in maintaining a safe environment. Is that part of your protocols that you're thinking about? If not, that is another thing that a lot of our manufacturers that manage a ton of people are doing some of those things. So there may be some transferability from some of these practices that's helpful.
So Jamie, did I hear you say that if you find a positive COVID case, you have to shut down for 2 weeks?
Yes, childcare.
So the CDC guidelines said something like, talking about whether schools should dismiss, and they said 2 days at least just to clean everything and assess the situation, but I didn't see the 2 weeks anywhere. So.
Now we have an entire CDC guideline for childcare.
Okay.
Birth to age 5 or 8, I don't know which it is. But I sat in on the webinar the night they released those CDC guidelines, and I'm working from home, so I'm not printing all that from my house, but it is on the website.
Okay. So it's for childcare facilities?
Yes. Okay. So that would be even family childcare homes, which Alicia, correct me if I'm wrong, that's our largest provider in the state of Indiana, our family childcare homes.
Yes.
So Lisa, have you got any insight on how we get our hands around that?
As far as hands around which part?
How the family child care providers are going to, what kind of shape they're in to begin to invite children back into their homes if they're not there now? Do we have a way of taking that temperature?
Well, they are currently, it is something that the State Department, which Ashley, if you'll chime in after I finish the statement about how we're trying to collect that information to be able to turn around and provide that kind of support. Plus they, like Jamie mentioned earlier, there was a group that met last night that had that conversation around that and what their needs are and things like that. So there's a separate working on that. Ashley, do you care to mention what OE CASEL is asking providers to do?
Sure. Hi, my name is Ashley Hansen. I'm actually a community engagement specialist with 4C. So OE CASEL and the FSSA has emailed out to all the providers asking if they're open so that we know as we're doing the childcare referrals, so parents are calling us and asking who is open, my childcare may have closed, or I'm still an essential worker and my child needs to go to care. So we need to know who is open and who is closed so that we can then offer those, provide, those options to the parents. So it's the emergency care survey that they have sent out. So we do encourage you to fill it out. We've only had 31 providers in Vanderburgh County fill it out. So when parents call me and ask who is open in Vanderburgh County, those are the ones I'm going to, because I know they're open, and it also then asks what age group you're open for. So are you taking school agers? Are you taking infants? How many spots do you have open? And they're even asking if you're needing support with staffing and an option like that. So I go to that, every time that I have a referral of a parent who calls me. So if you've got that, we really do encourage you to fill that out so that we know in real time. It was just last updated, I'm looking at it right now, at 11 p.m. on April 29th. So that's in real time. You can go in there, things change. So if you're no longer have infant spots, you can go in there and change that. So then when I go in there the next time, then I know this childcare no longer has opens for infants. I can go to the next one if an infant parent calls me.
And Elisa just put on the chat box FSSA's site so that you can get the CDC guidelines, also get to that form. And to kind of put it in perspective for those that aren't in the Vanderburgh childcare field, there are over 190 licensed child cares in Vanderburgh County, and we only have information on 30 of those.
And Alicia, do you have that same information for Posey, Warwick, Gibson?
We do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's actually across the state. So, I mean, I'm looking at all of them right now. So as in the entire state, there's what is reported on this one is 857 are only ones that are reporting that they're open right now for the whole entire state of Indiana. So if a parent calls me from Posey, I can look that up and they'll tell me if anybody is open. Like for Posey right now, I don't have any reported that they're open in Posey County. So, and I know that there are. So just, I've known that there is a few that haven't closed, but in this report, there's nobody showing that they are. So we really, really encourage you to fill that out. Is there
a communication challenge here that we need to get the word out somehow to our childcare industry that we need to hear from them?
I think that everyone's waiting on the governor's announcement, and if they cannot provide enough entertainment for school-age children, let's just say in our family childcare homes, they operate year-round. They may do before and after school care, but they're not going to take school agers with their young children this summer because they are hard to entertain in a home setting especially, and they are very hard to entertain if you think about no field trips. I cannot imagine school-age children in groupings of 100 in a center that can't go on field trips. I don't know what you would do with them.
We're sending them all to your camp, Jonathan. Put them out in the woods somewhere.
If we can run that. We're waiting to hear if we can run that too.
I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but it does sound like we've got a lot to figure out in this space. And, I put up an agenda that seems fairly irrelevant, but, if you're having transportation issues, we'd be happy to hear that. But it sounds like our biggest issues are going to be good guidance and a lot of work in this school age space.
Ashley, could you share who sent out that survey? I'm getting a lot of emails. I'm getting bombarded with emails, so I can look for that.
It would have been, it should have come from FSSA or the Office of Early Childhood and Out of School Learning, and it's called the Emergency Care Survey.
Not that we can amplify that, but if we have a link, we're happy to do what we can. Most childcare are not really active users of the Chamber of Commerce, but we could, maybe get the media or others to help cover this and say, we need to hear from you. I don't know, I'm brainstorming here, but it sounds like we've got a real time sensitive need to get this information back.
And I'll go back to what she said just a few minutes ago. Everybody's being bombarded by so many emails right now trying to get information out. It's hard to decipher what's important behind it. So we will, our website should be live again tomorrow. We've been doing some reconstruction, and we have
to all of the providers as well.
Great.
So we will trying to tie back and forth and get that communication out there.
Yeah, because I'm sure they're paying much more attention to 4Cs than they are to us. So that's wonderful. Yeah. What else is top? I've got a lot of smart people on the phone here. I don't want to end this conversation without asking what else we should know about as a community that cares about your work very much, and want to make sure that we're hearing what else is on your hot button. So please take a few minutes before we conclude here to bring up other things.
Tara, I'm intrigued. You got the facility cleaning best practices. I don't know if you guys talked about that before I joined the call.
We haven't. These are things I've picked up from the other calls that I thought might be relevant. So this is just Tara Barney's version, but facility cleaning has come up in a lot of our business sectors. And so we've been trying to stand up information about that where we can. So the health department has some pretty good one-pagers and that sort of thing.
So I'm interested in hearing from others. We've been looking into the foggers, the electrostatic foggers, and there are companies that actually will come into your place of employment and they will do this service for you as much as you need it. And from what I understand, it could range in between $80 to $600, depending on how big your space is. But we've looked into buying the foggers ourselves and having our staff do those on a more regular basis. We have found that they're very difficult to get our hands on. They're mostly back ordered and high demand. I don't know if anyone's thought about that type of technology in your childcare facilities. And if so, if you've had a chance to use them, can you give us feedback?
I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that I don't know where we purchased them from, but we did purchase foggers. Actually, Alyssa might know, but I don't know. We did purchase foggers before the flu season. And every time one of our children had flu in that room, we took care of it that night and did a fogger. But how much that cost and or where we got them, I have no idea. I just know we bought them this year for the first time.
Okay. It's supposed to be the best technology in terms of disinfecting.
It seemed to help.
Provides you with a layer of protection as well for a specified amount of time after it's clean.
And like I said, we have a lot of students, so the flu, pink eye, you name it at our center, we have it eventually. But mainly we used it for the flu this year. And it did seem to keep our numbers down somewhat more than last year.
Tara, it'd be great if we could find a vendor that, I don't know, is a local vendor or.
That's what I was just going to ask, if what we know about what's in this market, because that's something we could look into. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe get a good deal if we, purchased it together.
Yeah.
A number of organizations went in.
The other thing,
that's a sort of smart thing that we might look into if it would serve a number of organizations. Yeah.
I'm sure if we could get them cheaper, we would be in on that. Other thing that we are looking at is footwear. We have gotten booties for people who are coming in and out, but I've seen some of the larger companies that have like a thing that you dip your foot in. And we don't know what those are or even where we could get them at an affordable price. Just because we have so many children that are on the floor and crawling. We are going to make it, or we think, a guideline where our teachers have to have another pair of shoes, the shoes they wear outside and shoes they wear inside the building. Or we've even considered getting some of those grippy socks that the hospitals have for them to wear instead. But if anybody sees any of those, the disinfectant for the shoes, we don't know where to get those or how much that even costs.
Okay. Sounds like you might have some specialized needs that could be shareable in the community. Yeah, I could imagine that not everyone needs a fogger every night unless there's a breakout of some sort, but if there were a few available in the community and expertise, that might be an opportunity to manage this better. What else is going to cripple our process here from your perspective? Other things, And if these things that I have up there are not relevant, I'm good with that. But I'm hearing cleaning and protocols seem like huge priorities to spend more effort on among us. Okay, so here's my last ask. Are you all halfway willing to be kept in a little group that we might loop back with and ask more feedback, reaction, as we learn more from the business community and want to interface with you productively? And when it becomes not useful, no harm, no foul, but we need some, I'm going to say, cultural leaders in this space to help make sure that we are doing the best we can as a community to make sure that you're enabled going forward. So can I get a general thumbs up on that notion, or a heck no in the chat if you find that not productive? Because we would welcome the chance to be able to have a robust communication flow here. Alicia, what else should we bring up while we've got this august group assembled?
Just knowing that we do have current data, so that if we can be that resource to get you where you need to go. So if it's something that we can direct you to Spark Learning, because we know they're a holder of that information, if it's getting parents to know where there's emergency care, we do have all that housed. We are working remotely. However, we are answering phone calls and emails from our homes. So we are up and running and willing to think outside the box if needed, or just provide and direct people where they need to go.
Well, you're seeing two resources on the screen now. Whatever the governor says tomorrow, it'll be there right away, and then we will start to assemble, content behind that. So all of you will probably be listening closely at 1:30 tomorrow, but if you're not, you can check our website and find that. But above all, I want to thank you not only for what you're doing right now and give us an hour, but what you're doing in this community.
Well, thank you, Tara, for highlighting the early education field and those that work in it, and for bringing it more to light for the community as well and the leaders.
Well, I know that it is A, under talked about, B, underappreciated, but
Yeah.
if there's a time that it's going to be obvious to the community how important you are, I think it's the next few weeks.
Agreed.
So in all sincerity, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.